Well, prosecutors in Kenya have successfully applied for police to continue holding a man who is alleged to have sent threatening messages to Chris Msando, that is the IT manager for the Electoral Commission, who was killed a week before the August 8th election. Well, 58-year-old Andrew Rono had been arrested on the 15th of July. The prosecution argued that investigators were still scrutinizing Mr. Rono's phone and did not want him to interfere with investigations. Mr. Rono was Msando's landlord at a residential estate in the capital, Nairobi, until 4 years ago, and is believed to have frequently communicated with him even after he had moved out. Well, let's move over to Cameroon now, where tension is brewing in Bamenda, the capital of the nation's northwest region. English-speaking citizens have been protesting against what they call unfair treatment by the government, which is dominated by French speakers. Every Monday, shop owners in and around the city's two main markets shut their businesses in sympathy with the protests. But now the city council has permanently sealed off the affected areas, stopping shop owners from being able to reach their businesses in a move they say will pressurize the business people into ending their action. Anger appears to be building as the traders who came to the city to work are not returning home, as armed gendarmes and elite soldiers have been deployed in the city centre to enforce the move. Since last year, Bamenda has been hit by a series of protests. Authorities in Niger have ordered thousands of people to leave their homes in the capital, Niamey, because of serious flooding. Schools have been turned into makeshift shelter for many, while some others have nowhere to go. The floods have destroyed several buildings, livestock have been lost, roads already turned into rivers in several parts of the country. More than 40 people have been killed in flooding in Niger in the past 3 months. Well, in the meantime, Libya's Coast Guard have intercepted a boat carrying 128 migrants, which was headed for Italy. Well, Coast Guard official Ashraf al-Badri says the migrants who were found on board a dinghy were moved onto a Coast Guard ship before they were taken to a Tripoli naval base and later a detention center in the capital. One Tunisian migrant, Bashir Ben Ali, revealed that he paid a smuggler 2,000 Libyan dinars, which is $1,503, to board the boat, but the engine was too weak to make enough progress across the Mediterranean. This comes as the leaders of Germany, Italy, Spain, Chad, Niger and Libya meet in Paris for Migration Summit. Staying with the issue of migration, the Yemen office of the IOM says in 2015 alone, over 50,000 stowaways from Africa arrived in Yemen, and by 2016 the number doubled to over 100,000. In the first 7 months of 2017, over 50,000 stowaways reached Yemen, and experts believe that the actual number of stowaways might be far higher than official statistics, with most of them from countries in the Horn of Africa, including Ethiopia and Somalia. While the continuous wars plunged the economies of these countries into recession and has forced many people to flee their countries, they would risk their lives to sneak into Yemen, supposedly on a springboard, supposedly a springboard to Saudi Arabia, as well as other rich Gulf countries. Domestic chaos in Yemen has weakened the country's Coast Guard force, leaving nearly 2,000 kilometers of it almost unguarded, giving human traffickers, stowaways, greater chance to steal into Yemen without being detected or caught. Well, back in Libya, authorities have released 100 low-ranking former Gaddafi-era military officers from a Misrata military prison. The chief prison warden says the city and military prison leaders, along with the Attorney General, also reduced sentences of the remaining prisoners to 15 years. Warden Mohammed says the pardons were part of efforts to reconcile rival towns and tribes since the revolution. He added there were still 200 other prisoners still serving life sentences in various Misrata prisons. The released prisoners, who had been held since 2011 revolution against former Libyan leader, had been serving 10 to 15-year sentences. Libya slid into turmoil after Muammar Gaddafi's overthrow, with rival governments and armed alliances competing for power. And South Africa's health minister, Aaron Motsoaledi, has criticized African leaders for seeking medical treatment abroad. He was speaking in Zimbabwe at a World Health Organization meeting of African health ministers, where he criticized Africa as the only continent where its leaders travel abroad for health reasons. He described this as a health tourism, saying the continent should be ashamed instead of promoting its own. He was addressing the conference hours after President Robert Mugabe, who himself makes regular trips to Singapore for eye treatment, opened the meeting. It is reported that Mr. Mugabe left the meeting when the comments were made. In the past year, 5 African heads of state have gone overseas for medical reasons. Now, that list includes Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari, Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe, Benin's President Patrice Talon, Angola's Jose Eduardo dos Santos, and Algeria's Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Health campaigners have regularly criticized these foreign trips, arguing that they undermine the health service at home. Well, Dr. Motsoaledi himself has been praised by South Africans for using public hospitals instead of private facilities. Well, joining us now is a public affairs analyst, Oluwaseyi Adeyemo, to give us more perspective on this. Well, if you can hear me, Oluwaseyi, a number of African leaders have been accused of going abroad to receive medical treatment. What does this say about our value system in the continent?
It's obviously a very negative signal because we're talking about the well-being and the safety of Africans, and it is unfortunate. Leaders who are supposed to provide this medical facility so that Africans can have access to medical attention in Africa are the ones going out to Africa to seek medical attention. So definitely it is not a positive signal if one will put it in a light.
Well, and yet there has been so much focus on Africa's health systems. Have leaders abandoned this responsibility to aid groups and other organizations?
You see, the truth is there could be a lot of arguments here because they will tell you that facilities or health facilities are very, very expensive, capital intensive, and considering the fact that there has been a general economic downturn globally, they would say that it is seen that there are other pressing issues or competing issues, don't let me say pressing, competing issues that they're dealing with at this time. So they're not investing as much as they are expected to invest in medical facilities so that we can ensure that our people are able to get medical.
Mr. Adeyemo, how can we stop medical tourism in the short term while working on perhaps a long-term solution?
Essentially, I think first of all is to be able to entrust some of these very, what I call simple ailments into the hands. I mean, trust. That is what I'm trying to emphasize. I think as a people, we all have lost trust in our people, and then we need to also start believing in the fact that some of these things can even be treated here. And be shocked that taken abroad are things that could be dealt with here. And so our people need to understand that we have very skilled personnel here who could really do a lot the way we feel or our ailment. I mean, so rather than looking at traveling as the first option, let us be sure that of travel we do as regards medical issues are the ones that really will be nice for us to look for solutions that are not available here in Nigeria. So we need to first of all take as the first option, can we really focus on the here? Because it is not, it's a very talented Africans who are medical personnel and are doing very well across the world, and a lot of them are still back home there. It's because of the apathy of peace. A lot of people don't even consider the fact that they are here. So first thing for us to, return back the faith we have in our people, and that for me would be a short-term solution to this problem.
All right, Mr. Oluwaseyi Adeyemo is a public affairs analyst. Many thanks for joining us on Network Africa. Coming up after the break, Egyptian students produce diesel from used car tires. Do join us again.